Long before Hollywood understood the cost of childhood fame, Baby Peggy became one of its brightest and most exploited stars. As a little girl, she charmed millions, but behind the smiles was a life filled with relentless pressure, greedy adults, and later, unwanted attention from predatory men. Yet as she grew older, Peggy found an unexpected way to protect herself, using a clever secret weapon to keep those men at a distance. Her remarkable journey reveals the hidden price of becoming America's first child superstar. Born Peggy Jean Montgomery on October 29, 1918, in San Diego, California, Baby Peggy's rise to fame happened almost by accident. Her father, a former cowboy and park ranger, worked as a stuntman for Hollywood Western legend Tom Mix. One day, while accompanying her mother to Century Studios where her father was working, the curious toddler caught the attention of filmmakers. Calm, obedient, and unusually expressive for her age, Peggy impressed a director so much that he immediately cast her in several short films alongside the studio's famous canine performer, Brownie the Wonder Dog. Peggy's natural talent quickly transformed her into one of Hollywood's biggest attractions. After the success of Playmates in 1921, Century Studios signed her to a long-term contract. Between 1921 and 1924, she appeared in an astonishing 150 comedy shorts, working at a pace few adults could endure. In 1923, she moved to Universal Studios, where her fame reached an entirely new level. Ironically, the more audiences adored her, the more demanding her schedule became. When she wasn't filming, she was traveling across America on exhausting promotional tours, becoming one of the country's most recognizable faces before she was even old enough to understand fame. Her celebrity extended far beyond movie screens. During the 1924 Democratic National Convention, Baby Peggy was chosen as the event's official mascot, proudly waving the American flag beside Franklin D. Roosevelt before he became president. Everywhere she went, crowds gathered to see the tiny star. But while America celebrated her, her parents saw something else, a fortune waiting to be collected. They eagerly turned Peggy into a marketing phenomenon, licensing her image for magazines, advertisements, charities, and countless consumer products. Before reaching her 5th birthday, Baby Peggy's face appeared on dolls, handbags, jewelry, milk advertisements, and countless other products. Even more astonishing was the fortune she generated through her film career. Her contract with Universal reportedly earned around $1.5 million a year, the equivalent of roughly $23.7 million today. Yet despite making millions, Peggy had no control over a single dollar. Every cent flowed into the hands of the adults managing her career, leaving the child herself completely powerless over the wealth she created. Peggy's earnings transformed her family's lifestyle almost overnight. Before she was even 3 years old, the Montgomery family had moved into a luxurious Beverly Hills mansion staffed with maids. They stayed in elegant hotels, purchased a lavish $30,000 automobile, and chauffeured their tiny breadwinner to work in a limousine. From the outside, it appeared to be the perfect Hollywood dream. In reality, that glamorous life existed only because one small child worked relentlessly to support everyone around her. Baby Peggy's popularity reached levels that were almost impossible to comprehend. By the age of 6, she reportedly received more than 1.2 million fan letters, forcing her family to employ several people simply to sort through the overwhelming mountain of mail. Her extraordinary success also inspired countless ambitious parents to chase the same dream for their own children. Peggy later reflected that her rise to stardom influenced the mothers of future child icons such as Shirley Temple and Judy Garland, both of whom she eventually befriended. Garland even owned a Baby Peggy doll as a child, a symbol of just how enormous Peggy's fame had become, even if the heartbreaking reality behind that success remained hidden from the world. Behind the dazzling smiles and picture-perfect publicity, Baby Peggy's childhood was anything but glamorous. She entered Hollywood before child labor protections existed, making her one of the industry's most vulnerable young stars. At just 2 years old, she spent 8 hours a day on set, 6 days a week, with little time to rest, play, or receive a proper education. As audiences fell in love with the cheerful Baby Peggy, the real Peggy Jean Montgomery slowly disappeared beneath the overwhelming weight of the character the world expected her to be. The struggle to separate her public image from her true identity became so intense that it nearly pushed her to the brink of a mental breakdown. The dangers weren't limited to emotional strain. On set, Peggy was expected to perform many of her own stunts, even when they put her life at serious risk. During one production, she was supposed to escape from a room engulfed in flames. But when the planned exit caught fire, the terrified little girl had to improvise. She climbed out through a window, only to discover that the windowsill itself was burning. Somehow, she escaped unharmed, but the terrifying incident exposed just how little concern the studios had for the safety of one of their biggest stars. Even though Peggy's hard work made her family wealthy, she had no control over the fortune she earned. Her parents handled every dollar, spending lavishly on expensive homes, luxury cars, and fashionable clothing while saving almost nothing for their daughter's future. Because filming consumed nearly all of her time, Peggy and her sister received very little formal education. The child who had generated millions was unknowingly being left with neither an education nor financial security once the spotlight faded. That moment arrived far sooner than anyone expected. In 1925, Peggy's father became embroiled in a dispute with producer Saul Lesser over her salary. Rather than negotiating, Lesser retaliated by canceling Peggy's contract. Soon afterward, Hollywood effectively blacklisted the young actress. Reduced to a minor appearance in what would become her final film, Baby Peggy's movie career came to an abrupt end when she was only 7 years old. The little girl who had once dominated silent cinema suddenly found herself shut out of the industry she had helped build. And although the film studios turned their backs on her, Peggy remained a popular attraction on the vaudeville stage. For the next 4 years, she traveled constantly, performing across the country despite suffering from frequent illnesses, including recurring tonsillitis. Her health deteriorated so badly that her parents placed buckets beside the stage, allowing her to vomit before and after performances. Even severe sickness wasn't considered a reason to cancel a show. As long as audiences kept buying tickets, the exhausted child was expected to keep smiling. As Peggy struggled to earn a living, her family's finances spiraled out of control. Around the same time Universal dropped her, her grandfather reportedly stole most of the fortune she had earned as a child. Although her vaudeville income temporarily helped the family recover, years of extravagant spending eventually caught up with them. Forced to sell their luxurious Beverly Hills mansion, the Montgomery family left Hollywood behind for a ranch in rural Wyoming, hoping to reinvent their lives. Peggy's father invested the proceeds into an ambitious luxury retreat project, but the devastating stock market crash of 1929 destroyed those dreams almost overnight, leaving the family facing the hardships of the Great Depression. Surprisingly, Peggy found moments of genuine happiness away from Hollywood. Life on the ranch offered a rare chance to experience a more normal childhood, free from cameras and constant public attention. But the peace was short-lived. As financial pressures mounted, the family sold nearly everything they owned just to survive. With only $300 borrowed from a friend, they returned to Hollywood in search of another chance. Unfortunately, the industry Peggy returned to was no longer the one she had left behind. Silent films had given way to talking pictures, and the tiny child audiences once adored had become an ordinary teenager. Casting directors no longer saw the magical Baby Peggy, they saw just another young woman struggling to find work. Reduced to taking occasional jobs as a background extra for only $3 a day, Peggy found herself standing beside former silent film legends who had also watched their glittering careers disappear almost overnight. The girl who had once been Hollywood's biggest child star now faced the painful reality of starting over from the very bottom. As a small child, Baby Peggy rarely attended school, but once she returned to Hollywood as a teenager, that was no longer an option. The Los Angeles School Board required her to continue her education, so she and her sister enrolled at the Lawler Professional School, which catered to young performers with flexible schedules. Among her classmates were future stars Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. Yet while Peggy tried to balance school and a fading career, her family's financial collapse forced everyone to work just to survive. The constant stress fueled bitter arguments between her parents, turning home into the very place she longed to escape. With her Hollywood comeback going nowhere and her family life unraveling, Peggy found herself overwhelmed. The pressure became so unbearable that she suffered several nervous breakdowns. Feeling trapped by both her failed career and the chaos at home, the 17-year-old finally reached her breaking point. She and her sister ran away, determined to build lives beyond the control of the people who had managed and squandered her childhood. A few years later, another former child star changed Hollywood forever. In 1938, Jackie Coogan sued his parents after discovering they had spent the fortune he had earned as a child. Knowing Peggy's story was remarkably similar, her parents nervously asked whether she intended to do the same. She chose not to take legal action, but her experiences, alongside Coogan's, helped expose a widespread problem that lawmakers could no longer ignore. In 1939, California passed the landmark Coogan Act, officially known as the California Child Actors Bill. The legislation required that a portion of every child performer's earnings be protected in a trust and established stronger safeguards against financial exploitation. Although Peggy never recovered the millions she had earned, her painful experiences helped ensure that future generations of child actors would have protections she never received. After separating from her parents, Peggy continued chasing acting opportunities, but success remained elusive. During the filming of A Wilderness Calling, however, she found an unexpected bright spot. There she met Gordon Ayers, a bartender with dreams of making it in Hollywood. Their friendship blossomed into romance, and 3 years later they married, giving Peggy hope that a happier future might finally be within reach. Even as an adult, though, escaping the shadow of Baby Peggy proved nearly impossible. Audiences and casting directors refused to see her as anything other than the famous child star she had once been. Determined to reinvent herself, she adopted a new professional identity. Inspired by actress Diana Wynyard and taking her husband's surname, Peggy became Diana Ayers. But changing her name did little to change Hollywood's perception. The role she wanted remained out of reach, while a different kind of danger awaited her behind the scenes. Diana later recalled that many young actresses faced constant harassment on film sets. Men would casually approach women under the guise of friendliness, often beginning by massaging their shoulders or necks before making unwanted advances. Refusing to become another victim, Diana developed an unusual but remarkably effective defense. She carried a dense academic book wherever she went. The sight of a young woman deeply absorbed in serious intellectual reading seemed to intimidate the men around her, who quickly lost interest and left her alone. It became her quiet but powerful shield in an industry that offered women very little protection. Her personal life, however, continued to evolve. After a decade of marriage, Diana and Gordon Ayers divorced. Following the separation, she converted to Roman Catholicism and adopted another new name, Diana Sarah Carey. The change symbolized more than a fresh identity. It marked the beginning of a completely different chapter. By then, she had finally accepted a truth she had carried since childhood: she never truly loved acting. Rather than continuing to chase an increasingly impossible Hollywood comeback, she decided to leave the profession behind for good. Diana embraced an ordinary working life with surprising enthusiasm. She held jobs as a switchboard operator, bookstore assistant, and gift shop manager before discovering her greatest passion, books. In 1954, she founded a greeting card company and later managed a bookstore at the University of California, San Diego. During the 1960s, she also built a successful career as a freelance writer, contributing articles on history and religion. Away from movie sets, she finally found the stability and purpose that fame had never given her. A love also returned to her life. In 1954, Diana married artist Robert Carey. Together they raised a son and remained happily married until Robert's death in 2001. Their enduring relationship became a welcome contrast to the instability that had defined so much of her early life. Drawing on both her own extraordinary experiences and her father's years as a cowboy and stuntman, Diana reinvented herself once again, this time as a respected author and film historian. She published her first novel, The Hollywood Posse, in 1975, followed 3 years later by Hollywood's Children, an inside account of the child star era, a revealing examination of the exploitation faced by young performers. Finally, in 1996, after decades of confronting the trauma of her past, she released her deeply personal memoir, Whatever Happened to Baby Peggy, bringing full circle the remarkable story of the little girl who had once captivated Hollywood before fighting to reclaim her own identity. Writing her memoir became a turning point in Diana Sarah Carey's life. Looking back on the extraordinary rise and heartbreaking downfall of Baby Peggy allowed her to confront years of painful memories, from the relentless demands of child stardom to the devastating loss of the fortune she had earned. The process proved deeply cathartic, helping her finally make peace with a childhood that had been defined by exploitation. But Diana was determined that her story would not simply be remembered, it would serve as a warning for future generations. Her mission soon expanded beyond her own experiences. In 2003, Diana published The World's Boy King, a biography of fellow child star Jackie Coogan, whose legal battle had inspired sweeping reforms for child performers. Through her books and interviews, she also honored the lives of many other young stars, including her close friend Judy Garland, highlighting the emotional and financial hardships they had endured behind Hollywood's glamorous image. Diana became one of the industry's strongest voices, determined to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be forgotten. Her advocacy extended far beyond the written page. Diana joined the non-profit organization A Minor Consideration, dedicating herself to improving the lives and working conditions of child actors. She frequently appeared at classic film screenings, conferences, and public events, speaking candidly about the hidden dangers of child stardom and urging audiences to recognize the human cost behind Hollywood's brightest young faces. Unlike earlier in her life, she no longer tried to distance herself from Baby Peggy. Instead, she embraced that remarkable chapter, using it to educate others and inspire meaningful change. As the years passed, Diana became an invaluable witness to Hollywood history. She appeared in numerous documentaries and interviews, offering first-hand accounts of the silent film era and the realities of growing up in front of the camera. Her insights helped preserve a disappearing chapter of cinema while giving historians and audiences a rare glimpse into the experiences of one of Hollywood's earliest child superstars. Even in her late 90s, Diana refused to slow down. In 2017, she celebrated her 99th birthday by publishing her first work of fiction, The Drowning of the Moon, proving that her passion for storytelling had never faded. Remarkably, she remained active as both an author and advocate well into her second century of life, continuing to share her experiences with anyone willing to listen. On February 24, 2020, Diana Sarah Carey passed away peacefully at her California home at the remarkable age of 101. Just 10 days before her death, she had spoken with the silent film blog Silence, Please, once again discussing the realities of child stardom and the importance of protecting young performers. It was a fitting final interview for a woman who had spent decades transforming personal tragedy into lasting reform. Though Baby Peggy's glittering Hollywood career ended almost a century earlier, Diana's legacy lived on through the countless child actors whose lives became safer because she chose to tell the truth. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. I hope you discovered something new and interesting today. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next destination. See you in the next journey.